Welcome back to WGTE's Classical Conversations. I'm Mary Claire Murphy, and on the docket today we have Homegrown Art Music by Ohio composer Rick Sowash. Rick is quite the Renaissance man with some 500 published scores to his name. He's also an author and a public speaker with a keen sense for storytelling. Thank you, Rick, for taking a few minutes for a call.
My pleasure.
So, Renaissance Man is one title, but I've also heard or understand that you are a self-described outsider composer. And what does that mean? Why do you identify as an outsider?
Well, partly because one of my heroes is Charles Ives, who was himself an outsider composer, which is to say that neither of us have been connected or affiliated with any organization, academic, corporate, governmental, arts council, none of that, just independent. When I sit on an airplane next to someone and they ask me, "What do you do?" I say, "Well, I'm a composer," and they immediately say, "Where do you teach?" And I have to say, "Oh, I don't teach anywhere. I'm an independent composer." And that's hard for people to get their minds wrapped around. But what it means is that I do everything myself, the heavy lifting from the bootstraps up. I write the music, I recruit musicians, I organize recording sessions, I produce my own CDs, I send them out to radio stations, everything by myself with no label or grant support or academic sabbatical or any of that. It leaves me free to write music as I please for my own sensibility, first of all, but secondly, for the sensibilities of the musicians and listeners ultimately who will be hearing it.
So, I guess with that in mind, what kind of music pleases you?
I describe it as American classical. If I say classical, they say, "Well, do you write like Bach or Haydn or Mozart?" And no. And if I just say American, well, that could be country western or Gershwin, and I love Gershwin, but it's my own American sounding classical music. Another way of saying it, which is cute, is I think more and more listeners are aware of Gerald Finzi, the English composer who wrote a bucolic, pastoral kind of music. And in some ways, I like to say that I'm an American version of Gerald Finzi, which is to say, Huckleberry Finzi, my joke.
When you look back on your development as a composer, do you feel like there's a moment in time where you really latched on to a particular vision for your music or found your voice in compositional style?
Well, yes, I started when I was 12, just fiddling around with little fragments. And by the time I was 18, I had written two or three pieces that sound like me. But then I went to college, and in the School of Music that I attended, in the late 60s and early 70s, we were strongly discouraged from writing anything tonal. It was all about Pierre Boulez and Stockhausen and those kinds of composers. And I had no interest nor ability at that kind of music. So for several years, I tried to have it both ways, which is terrible. You can't please two masters. I tried to be true to myself, but also write in a way that would fly in it. I don't any none of that music now. When I look back on it, do I want to ever even hear? But then finally, the happy day came when I left college forever and went back to Ohio. And then in the next year or so, I began to allow myself to write the kind of music that I wanted to write, which is to say tonal, melodic, traditional harmonies and progressions, and with a emphasis on accessibility. Um, uh, no previous experience required in order to enjoy my music. Those kinds of values, and also to be an Ohio composer. It's worth mentioning that, Charles Ives was very much a Connecticut composer. He wrote about his own part of the country in a way that he thought was authentic to that. And that inspired me. I seriously asked myself, what kind of music would an Ohio classical composer write? And it would not sound like the avant-garde in Juilliard or the West Coast. It would be something different from that. It would be a Midwestern sounding music. And so one of my inspirations was, in fact, Aaron Copland's opera, The Tender Land, which, of course, takes place in the Midwest. And I strived to become that sort of composer. Now, I have to add that that served me well for a decade or two, but I began eventually to move beyond that and write music that does not particularly sound Ohioan, but still American, but more, but broader than that, broader than that. So sometimes, for example, I might evoke Hollywood film scores, or other times I might try to imagine, I've done this several times, what if Gershwin had lived a long life instead of dying in his 30s? What music would he have written in his 60s and 70s? What kind of chamber music would Gershwin have been writing? And asking myself that question, I try to come up with some answers like, well, this is what I might imagine Gershwin would be writing if he had reached that age. And see, that's going beyond the boundaries of being a regionalist Ohio composer, which has been good for me.
As an independent composer, could you paint us a picture of a day in the life, maybe how you balance your composition with other writings and public speaking engagements?
Yes, well, early morning is the time for me. I'm an early riser, 5:30, 6. I have my coffee for an hour or so, wake up, and then I usually put in about 3 hours most days writing music. Lately, I've been working on a concerto for oboe, strings, and harp. And the music is written in that time frame, but it may run over several weeks, before a piece actually begins to emerge. And also, I should add that I don't write music just um, out of the blue from a need for artistic expression or something like that. I write as a craftsman, creating an artifact for a specific musician. For example, I have this wonderful friend who's an oboist. He's both a wonderful friend and a wonderful oboist. And he's been after me for a year to write a concerto for him. So this concerto is very much conceived for his kind of playing, the kind of lyrical lines that he likes to do. And I just sent it to him 2 days ago, and now I'm on pins and needles waiting to waiting for him to react to it. Because I don't play the oboe, and there will surely be some things that I didn't get right or that could be better, breath marks here and there and whatnot. So now I'm waiting, but I know he'll like the piece, and I know that we'll do it and feature him eventually on a CD that'll be sent to you among other classical stations.
Fantastic. Well, maybe since we're speaking about recent projects, maybe we take a moment to probe a couple of your other more recent albums. I'm thinking Voyagers is one, and we also have A Pirate's Christmas. Now, personally, I am intrigued by this like swashbuckling twist that you have on holiday tunes. And since we are so close to Christmas in July, maybe we start there. What can you tell us about A Pirate's Christmas?
Well, it's a lighthearted piece. It's it doesn't come from the depths of my soul. It's a comic, It's meant to be on the comic side. Even the title tells you that already. But the genesis of it is interesting, I think. In that case, I had a cellist in mind, and the cello is kind of a gruff instrument. It can be kind of a sort of instrument. So I thought kind of a pirate instrument. And, well, it occurred to me that if certain, in fact, many traditional carols that we sing at Christmas time, if you change the meter, they sound like pirate songs. So, for example, let's take "What Child Is This?" Da-rum bum beam da-da-dum bum bum da-da-dum bum ba da-da-dee da-da. And other Christmas carols already sound like pirate songs without changing anything, like "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen." Da-dum ba-dee da-da-da-da-da. So I thought, what a hoot! What if we were to take, say, a handful, maybe a dozen familiar Christmas carols and let the pirates capture them, so to speak. So we have good King Wenceslas is captured by the pirates and held in ransom, not made to walk the plank. It has a happy ending. But so then I needed to make the music sound piratey, not only by altering Christmas carols, but by inventing some of my own pirate tunes. So I listened to the great Korngold film scores for Captain Blood and the Seahawk, and I remembered others. And of course, there's Yo Ho Ho, 16 Men on a Dead Man's Head, those things. And I melded them all together into this 6-minute piece for solo cello. But even though it was a lot of fun for solo cello, it needed more than that. So I added a flute to give it some sparkle over the top, and I added a piano to flesh out the full, almost orchestral sound that a film score might have. So that is how A Pirate's Christmas came to be.
So yo ho ho meets ho 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 in this
Yes,
case.
yes, you could say, or I say, yo ho ho and a cup of eggnog.
I love that. Yeah. And did you say that one of the pieces has roots I know you have a Christmas piece about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Yes, yes, that's a beautiful medieval poem, although it runs to some 60 pages, and it tells the story of this uh, knight of the Round Table who has an encounter with a mysterious green knight who represents the force of nature. And in that case, I wrote music uh, thinking that it could serve as a film score. Now, no one asked me to write a film score for this epic, but I asked myself, well, but what if someone did? And you don't have to have a film to write a film score. So I just went ahead and wrote a film score, even though there was no film to go with it. It turned out to be a 5 movement suite, which has different scenes from the film, this non-existent film. And so, for example, the first movement is called King Arthur's Court at Christmas. And you can imagine quickly in your own mind what that would look like on a screen. King Arthur's Court at Christmas, and then ask yourself, well, what sort of music would you be hearing if you were watching a scene like that? And you see, for a composer, asking yourself that sort of question, what sort of music would be right for King Arthur's Court at Christmas? That once you ask yourself that question, then answers start to come. You start to have ideas. Short of that, though, without asking yourself any question, I don't, I'm just kind of a blank. I need some kind of question. As I said earlier, what would a pirate's Christmas sound like? Or what sort of concerto would my friend like to play? See, once you ask those questions, then the answers start to come.
What about for the album Voyagers? And we're turning from, we just talked about instrumentation for flute, cello, and piano, and now we're looking at clarinet trio. Not many composers actually have written as extensively for clarinet trio as you have. What draws you to that?
I have still three friends in France who very much wanted me to write a piece for them, and I did. And then they wanted me to write another piece, and I did, and another piece. So I had three trios, and they recorded all three of them. Les Gavottes is the name of the ensemble. By the way, my ancestors are French. I speak French. I've taught French. I've been to France lots of times, and worked closely with these musicians. So I just kept on writing, and I went all the way to 13 numbered trios for clarinet, cello, and piano. And then slowly I got them recorded. And this most recent CD you mentioned, Voyagers, is the recording that features the numbers 11, 12, and 13, the final three. So now I have the whole set recorded, which is really satisfying for me. And beautiful performances. All of them written with this trio in France in mind, but in fact, they ended up being recorded by other trios here and there across the United States.
How would you characterize those last three trios? And also, what of the album title Voyagers?
Okay, the trio number 11, the subtitle of it is we sang, we danced, but that's not quite an accurate translation. What it wants to say is we used to sing, we used to dance, but see that's awkward in English. In French, it's very felicitous. You just say nous chantions, nous dansions, but that used to is makes for an awkward translation. But the point is. It's about singing and dancing, but it's a little melancholy. It's as if you're sighing and saying, we used to do these things, but we don't do them anymore. It's kind of a backward looking with a sigh. Only then, as a surprise, the final movement is a tango, which is, again, comic. I meant to write a parody of a tango, but the tango already is such an exaggerated thing, you can hardly write a parody of a tango. So I just ended up writing a tango, the only tango I've ever written. That's the finale of number 11. And then for number 12, that's where the album gets its title. It's an homage to Canada, and it's subtitled Voyageurs. The Voyageurs were these French Canadian mountain men that went out west even before Lewis and Clark and explored the West and made it to the Pacific and really epic, historic figures. And the whole piece is an epic homage to Canada. The final movement is called A Majestic Land. And just a bit more about that. In the other trios, I always made the clarinet and the cello like actors on a stage with the piano being a backdrop, a canvas backdrop. So the piano is always kind of given short shrift in the other trios, but I decided in number 12, I would make the piano the spotlight. So it's almost a piano concerto where the clarinet and cello are playing the part of the orchestra. You could think of it that way. Then number 13, being a dark number 13, I turned to the dark side and I wrote a piece in E flat minor, a dark key, although it is splashed throughout with leaps to A major, the extreme opposite on the circle of fifths. And so there are dark and bright passages juxtaposed, you could say, through the piece. And the final movement of that and the end of the CD is a fugue, but you know how usually, well, the way a fugue is supposed to work is you have the subject stated in one key by the first voice, and then the second voice comes in and it states the same subject, but a fifth higher. That's the classic way all fugues are supposed to work. Well, in my piece, the second voice comes in a tritone higher, which is to say a little half step less and a weird piquant alignment of tonalities. And so the piece proceeds then. You have a fugue at the tritone, which is really strange, but it turns out to be very exuberant. I sort of thought of it as being angry when I was writing it, but people have said, no, that's not anger, that's exuberance. And I listen, I think now, well, maybe maybe they're right, you know. So that's the overview of Voyageurs, the new CD album.
Well, I know we have a lot of Rick Sowash fans out there. How can listeners best stay connected?
I have developed a project that I think is unique to me. I send out an email every Sunday morning at 7:30 to a group of hundreds of fans and friends who are interested in my work. And the email begins with some verbiage, some background, what to listen for, how the piece came to be righted, sometimes philosophical, and so forth. And then there are links provided where they can hear the piece in a fine performance, and if they like, follow the score. I also provide a link for the score. And if someone is interested in that, they can just visit my website, which is www.sowash.com, and it tells there how to sign up, and it's free and fun. And I've done it for 14 years now, send out hundreds of these, and people love them.
Comments today from Ohio composer Rick Sowash, and we are excited to stay in touch with you in the future. Thank you so much, Rick, for your conversation.
Oh, you're so welcome. It was really fun. Thank you.